Hi, I'm Kit Bowen.
And my name is Ryan T. Husk, and this is the Creation Entertainment Podcast. Today, we start off with our co-CEO, Adam Malin, interviewing Ian Somerhalder of Vampire Diaries. You know him.
Yes, he's Damon Salvatore. The Salvatore brother is the other one played by Paul Wesley, who's Stefan Salvatore. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And then Adam and I in the Pop Culture Cinema Squad discuss Mission Impossible, the movie franchise. My enthusiasm will come shining through because this is definitely one of my most favorite, my most favorite film franchises of all time.
So sit back and relax because you're going to enjoy all of that and more on today's episode of the Creation Entertainment Podcast.
Hi guys, it's Adam Malin, broadcasting from Newark International Airport. I just finished off parts 2 and 3 of my interview with Ian Somerhalder, but this is an introduction to part 1, which you'll be viewing shortly. I had an amazing dialogue with Ian. Ian, as you know, is the superstar behind Damon of Vampire Diaries, but also an amazing philanthropist, as well as a guy that has been teaching the world about the dangers of bad soil tilling and the good qualities of regenerative agriculture. He's also, of course, the founder of Ian Somerhalder Foundation, which has done charitable work now for several decades. In my conversation with Ian, part 1 of which you're about to view, we had a fantastic talk on the early parts of his career. I didn't know if you knew that he was a model at one point, although you wouldn't be surprised looking at the dude, and had a fascinating early start in television and film, which prefaces his amazing run on Vampire Diaries. So today we present to you part 1 of my interview with Ian Somerhalder, and I hope you enjoy my dialogue with him as much as I did. Ian Somerhalder, welcome to the Creation Entertainment interview.
How are you, my dear brother?
I'm just fantastic. It's great to see you again. And
good to see you, man.
I think pretty well much all of our viewers know that Ian is our fantastic top liner, along with his partner in crime, Paul Wesley, at the official Vampire Weekends, which, of course, really are about Vampire Diaries, your wonderful show. But there's so much more to the great Ian Somerhalder, and I know, of course, what a great heart you've got and what an amazing philanthropist you are, and some of the amazing causes that you do that a lot of our viewers don't know about. So we have a short amount of time, so if you'll indulge me, we'll get right into it.
Hell yeah, brother.
I want to do a little bit of a not too deep of a dive, but...
And by the way, Adam, thanks for saying all those kind things, man. I love and appreciate you. You and I have known each other for 15 years. We've been able to be a part of something very special together. We've gotten a lot of amazing energy, but we've been able to make a lot of people happy together through your genius and hard work and your team. And it's been nothing short of incredible. So we thank you for creating this venue, this thing that allows us all to come together. So
thank you. The truth is that you're only as good as your top liners. You and Paul are the consummate professionals at those shows.
Thanks, man.
We counted on you for 15 years. You guys have hit your marks. I mean, obviously you guys are TV top liners, so if you don't hit your mark, the whole network can come crashing down on you. So you're total pros, and we're grateful for that. But I wanted to delve a little bit about your upbringing. Tell me something about Covington and Louisiana, your childhood, because I love Louisiana. So what was that kind of Cajun gumbo that you kind of grew up in?
Man, it's such a special place. I'm the only person in my family born in Covington on the North Shore, because everyone else was born in the city in New Orleans. And my mom just said, I'm not doing this. I'm not having this kid in the city. This one's going to be different. And she was a Mississippi farm girl. My dad is a very, French descent, that really cool, awesome happening, sort of like Cajun. I always say, I can say this because I am one, but my mom is a Mississippi redneck and my dad is like a Bayou coon-ass. That's what they call them, right? And so the blending of those two together was really special by virtue of the fact that I got that farm life. My grandfather was an unbelievable farmer, my whole family, but also in an agricultural inventor too. In the 40s, he was producing things that I wish he had patented them. Oh my gosh, if he had patented this stuff, we'd be so rich. And then, but as you know, 35, 40 years ago, things were just so different. And even growing up in the deep, deep South in Louisiana, there was such an enormous sense of community. It was back when, you played outside and you rode your bike or your skateboard or whatever it was, um, or your horse, um, and you partied outside with your friends, climbing, jumping. When people got in fights, they grappled on the ground and they yelled at each other. Um, and then street lights came on, and you hauled ass home. You know, and as you were hauling ass home, you could see other moms and dads opening the doors to their houses about to yell, and they're like, "I'm here, mom," because then the one thing you didn't want to do is you didn't want to you didn't want them to have to yell. You wanted to get there right before. Um, but growing up on the bayous and the rivers of Covington, Mandeville, and Lacombe, Louisiana, was really, really special. Um, I got that bayou, you know, low lying area experience, meaning
I mean, it's
we we also too, like, listen, we were very, very poor. We were very intimately engaged with the poverty line, but you didn't know it really. You know, I might have only had like two pairs of shoes. In that sense, you knew it, but like we had all the equipment we needed, right? And food and community and so what it was you lived off of the air sea land. It was
yeah,
amazing. My grandparents had a farm, but then you lived off the fish, the shrimp, the crab, um, the ducks that fell out of the sky. Like you lived off of all of these incredible nutrients and not nutria rats you don't want to live off of.
oh, I know. But I mean, living off the land and having this agricultural heritage in your family really informed the path and direction that you took in your life, especially
Right.
on the amazing projects in terms of soil replenishment and so much stuff that you've taught me that we're going to talk about is really incredible. But before all of that happened, I mean, because of your fabulous good looks, I mean, you have some
Yeah,
incredible genes where I mean, you're just a beautiful man, and I'm not ashamed to say it. You're
brother.
you're a gorgeous man, with all of your, English, Irish, some Native American. You have a lot of interesting genes in you. But of course, you started with a modeling career. And I mean, you modeled for huge, huge brands. Just tell me a little bit about your modeling experience, because that sounds like it would be so much fun. Was it a cool experience? Was it a positive experience?
It was unbelievable. By the way, it's not for everyone. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, not being like 6'2" and a perfect 42 regular or something. I was more of the brand stuff. Um, the stuff like eyewear and shoes but at 16, I was the face of one of really the main faces of for that season, the face of Versace. And
Incredible.
that was just such a wild thing. And a couple people got my mom spent every dollar we had. It's one of those Malcolm Gladwell moments where she had been laid off from a state mental institution that she was working in, and she'd gotten a severance check from the state. I'm sure it was, supplemented by the feds. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
it was more money than she'd ever seen. And she took that money and used it for me to get modeling and acting classes.
Uh,
And she borrowed some money from my Aunt Nancy, too. And we went to a modeling convention in 1990. This is a long time ago. And I won every award because I was fearless. I didn't have anything to fear. And she spent money on getting me like, commercial, TV commercial lessons or coaching. And I'd done theater since I was like 7. So I just didn't care. It was just more fun. And then I had a
working
Ford.
for Versace. I mean that's as big of a modeling gig as you can have. So did you go off to Europe?
Yeah. So, and also, Adam, it's so wild because it was a different time, right? Like, so many of my friends now have teenage sons and daughters who are 16, 17, 18, even into their early 20s. When I was 16, I was an emancipated kid living in New York
Crazy.
and Europe. And so by the time I was 17, I was oscillating between New York, Paris, Milan, Miami for the most part, in LA. But that's how you live. Milan, Paris, New York. Milan, Paris, New York.
Yeah,
That's living in 3
world. Greatest cities in the world,
Oh, incredible. But at 17 years old, it was a different 17 in 1990.
Yeah.
What's to say?
Yeah.
I turned 16 in 1994 and moved to New York the next week because my mom, we had, I initially from 10 to 13, I had a contract with Ford Models. And that's back when Eileen Ford was in the office every day. So when my mom and I would go, we'd take it, going to get my checks, right, from all the little vouchers you sign out. And, I was doing like Gap and Ralph Lauren Kids and all this stuff. And all those huge supermodel girls were in there. So I'd like sit on their lap and, they would ask me how my week was. And then so 14 and 15, I was home playing football, riding my horses, doing all the fun stuff that you do. But I got that itch again. And I just said, Mom, I really want to get back out there. And she goes, okay. So she saved some money, borrowed some more from my Aunt Nancy, and took me to another modeling convention in New York City. In New Orleans. And that was the day of my birthday, December 8th, 1994. And some agents took some pictures of me. And 5 days later, I get a phone call from New York saying, hey, it's this agency. We took these Polaroids for you. And there's this guy named Steven Meisel who just booked you in like 10 or 12 pages of this magazine called L'Uomo Vogue. Can you leave tomorrow? So I was 16. I'd been 16 for 5 days. Imagine. And I got on a plane and I flew to New York and I shot. At the time, Steven Meisel was the biggest photographer in the world, period. Other than like, Helmut Newton or Annie Leibovitz. Well, Annie Leibovitz. Yeah, of course. Like those were like the big oh gosh, what's his name? The other big one. But him and Bruce Weber. So basically, I flew to New York, shot this big campaign. This big thing. It came out very quickly, and all of a sudden, I'm the kid in like a 12-page spread in L'Uomo Vogue, shot by Steven Meisel.
It's crazy, but at the same time, you also, had the acting bug. And is it true that you worked with William Esper, who
I did study with Bill Esper, but I did that after all this stuff. So the fashion part, I moved to Milan, and I had a mother agent down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who really looked out for me.
Yeah.
She was the surrogate mom to me, this woman, Brenda Netzberger.
Yeah.
She and my agents in New York, but she managed everything for years. I wouldn't have any of this without her. And it was my mom's foresight and hard work, and then Brenda's foresight and management that really put all the pieces together. And then my dear brother Gene Kogan in New York. But I got to tell you, this went on for years. So I always knew I wanted to study acting, but I needed that platform. And so to do it, every time I'd enroll or go to do an acting class, Target was one of my biggest customers. I owe Target so much because they were the Target and Guess, Paul Marciano, and Target.
Great brands,
Oh yeah, Paul. I talk to Paul and Matt Marciano. I talk to Matt Marciano every week.
Geniuses. Geniuses.
Insane. So
yes, those guys are billionaires.
Yeah, but I had I had a contract with Guess, so I had
Great.
massive Guess billboards on La Cienega and all over the world and in airports and stuff. And so what it did was I would get an acting class and then I would book a job and I would leave for a week or something, you know. And then finally one day I remember I was brushing my teeth. I was fed up. I wanted to get auditions and stuff, but I knew I needed to study. And I remember, I was brushing my teeth in my apartment in New York City. I'm not kidding you. I think I was 17, I think. And I said, damn it, next year so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scrounge, right? I'm just gonna scrounge up everything. Um, no more splurging at fancy restaurants and stuff. I'm just gonna scrounge up and I'm gonna stop working and I'm just gonna focus on studying. And I did. And there was this guy named Anthony Abeson that I worked with first, who's this unbelievable acting coach. And then found my way and Anthony Abeson taught me so much. Kind, compassionate, huge, unbelievable talent. And then I found my way to Esper.
Yeah.
And Esper had this way of, when you walk in and there's pictures of like him and Pacino and Stella Adler and Sandy Meisner and all these, it was like Timothy Oliphant was studying as well. And I want to say Sam Rockwell. I'm talking like dudes who massive
He must have seen
actors.
your potential, right?
They were right before me. And I think Walton Goggins might have studied with him too, but I'm not sure. But I dove into Esper and I said, hey, come hell or high water, I'm not leaving I'm not leaving the island, right? I'm staying in Manhattan. And I got to do it for a while and I committed and I committed and I committed. And I started working a little bit, but learning a lot. And it was that commitment. And by the way, companies like Guess and companies like Target, who paid me so much cash that it enabled me. I didn't have to eat cornflakes, right? I could get like great food and I could go to the gym and I could train and do all the shit I needed, but I could focus on just the craft. And that was my college. And then I booked this man named Stephen Anton, who is an incredible writer, director, huge now. He's the guy that directed Burlesque, who now is a huge show on the West End in London. Yeah. But I always say Stephen Anton and Kevin Williamson are my makers. And obviously Julie Plec, and obviously Roger Avery. But
before we get up there, and I just have to move forward a little bit because we're on a very tight leash here. You started getting some acting work, and then you really broke out in Lost. Boone Carlyle was like a very faithful character. Lost was an incredible role for you. So just let's reflect for a minute or two on your work in Lost. First of all, how'd you get cast on that? How did that go?
I was the first one cast, first one killed.
Yeah.
It was the wildest thing. Again, I remember every step of that process. I remember going to the Disney Animation building for the first time and meeting J.J. Abrams, Brian Burke, who I just talked to yesterday, Damon Lindelof. These guys are all like mentors, right? Yeah. And I remember being in that room. And then I remember getting the test deal. And I remember the night before the test, I lived in this unbelievably fancy, old, cool house. One of Errol Flynn's old houses. My 20s in LA were very different than most people's 20s. I had an 8-bedroom house on Sunset Boulevard. It was mad. Put it this way, I could fit 450 people at a time legally.
And you did.
And I did. But I got a phone. It was this cool, fancy old, it was like a hotel, but it was like this fancy phone in my bathroom. And I think I was taking a shower or something. And someone yelled up like, you got to get on the phone. So I pick it up and it's J.J. Abrams. And so I put the seat down and I sat on the toilet and I was like, yeah, I thought someone was calling me to tell me something was wrong. And he said, hey, I'm calling you right now because tomorrow you're going to test for this show. And I just want you to know that we're excited, but this is going to be a huge ensemble. This is going to be a testament of professionalism, doing the work, really dialing in, and not creating a ruckus, right? Are you an adult? Are you a professional? Because if you are, then we are then we're your team, right? Come to find out, he actually called everyone, all the principal, everyone who would end up getting cast. I walked into that Disney into the ABC office to do the network tests. And, it was back where, those executives see so many of these tests.
That's, I mean, today it's all self-tapes, but in that era,
it used to be they were just sitting there on their phones or whatever, and you could hear.
How many auditions did you actually end up going through to finally get the role?
What's wild? I did one session with JJ and Damon and Berkey, and then I did another read, and then I did a test. And I remember I was just in this theater room at Disney at ABC, and JJ's sitting right there, and I'm on the floor, and it was this scene where Boone is digging. Oh, no, I auditioned with the Sawyer material, I think. Oh, yeah. That was the material. Yeah, it was it was actually the Sawyer material. Right. And there's a scene where he's digging in the sand, and in this room, in my mind, I was on a beach in a deserted island after just getting, falling 30,000 feet out of a L1011, and I'm just digging the sand and doing the scene, just there. And then I finish the scene, and I look up, and there's JJ, 2 feet, 3 feet from me, like right there. And I kind of came out of it, and he, I'll never forget. JJ was so sweet. He goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, as I live and breathe, Ian Somerhalder." And I walked out of the room, but there were no other actors. Can you believe JJ Abrams believed in me so much? Apparently I did something wrong because I got my ass killed, but no, that he convinced the studio and the network to not test anyone opposite me. And now, mind you, this is when Lloyd Braun was still in power, our dear brother Lloyd, but ABC had a string of like 8 years of really bad luck. So much so that Lloyd Braun, who was a genius, who greenlit Lost, Desperate Housewives, and Grey's Anatomy all in the same season, and those shows changed network television forever.
Yeah.
He was let go from ABC in the middle of shooting our pilot. That Lost pilot was the most expensive pilot ever produced in history at the time. I think it was $14.5 million. But J.J. Abrams literally said, "As I live and breathe, ladies and gentlemen, Ian Somerhalder," he didn't test anyone opposite of me. Oh. And I got a call like that afternoon from my manager, Alyssa Bradenberg, who's been my manager for 24 years. And she goes, "Well, here you go. You're going to Hawaii, buddy."
But, the fact that I wouldn't feel bad about the character dying because Boone was so pivotal. I mean, you found the hatch. I mean, it was really, really important. So
it was brutal, though, man. I'll tell you, I look back and I realize the error of my ways. And that's why Damon was a, pardon my French, fucking polar opposite, right? One of the things I forgot about with Boone, because I was 25, I was so serious about everything. Boone had no levity, whereas a character like Sawyer or Hurley or any of them, they had so much levity. And what I didn't put together was that the island required that. The roles required that. And so, again, I was a pretty white boy. And right. You learn very quickly to not make yourself expendable. Make yourself unexpendable. Do so much of the work, carry so much of the weight that it is impossible for that show to go on without you.
Listen, everything happens for a reason. Let's talk about Vampire Diaries. How did the gig come about, and how did you connect with Julie? Because that's one of the defining roles of your career.
It was the biggest moment of my career. And the funny thing was, I was in Joshua Tree at my dear, dear brother, Bryn Mooser's place, we all went on to, with David Darg. They created riot.org. Remember that amazing media company? We sold that to HuffPo. But I had this Vampire Diaries script, and it was Kevin Williamson. And I wanted to be some cool Johnny Depp actor, right? Like I'd gone and done independent film, I'd done Broadway or off Broadway, and it was very successful. But you fall off the map, right? I wanted to stay away from the network dog and pony show. Well, you fall off the map. And then I realized, you know, I don't want to be on a CW show. I don't want to do that. And I'd had a meeting with Brian Burke. I had a lunch with Brian Burke. Actually, I remember we were at the Coffee Bean on frickin' Sunset Boulevard. And you know what he said to me? I said, Berkey, I need help. I need help strategizing what my next move is because I'm not getting the roles I want. It's all, Jake Gyllenhaal's and all these guys. And he goes, look, man, I'm going to be honest with you. He'd been talking to some big directors. He goes, we're casting so much stuff off of television. And at the time, guys like Kyle Chandler and all these guys were doing these huge movies and they were all television stars. And he goes, the game has changed. You need to get on like one of these Josh Whedon, it was Josh Whedon he had had a conversation with, and they were talking about casting. This is in like 2008, right? The world had fallen apart. Bear Stearns, think about it. It was Madoff, Bear Stearns. The economy had just taken a massive digger. Everything was upside down. And studios were casting big TV stars instead of unknowns or movie stars.
Oh, but I mean, Damon was such a gift. He was such a gift. I mean,
100%. But I didn't want to believe Berkey. And I didn't want to believe what Brian Burke was saying. And at the time, he was one of the biggest producers ever, right? They were doing Mission Impossible and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And Brian's one of my dear brothers to this day. I literally talked to him yesterday. And you know what I said in that moment when he told me that I needed to go and take a general or get my agent and manager on with the CW to start looking for scripts? I yelled at him. I told him, I was like, you don't freaking know me, man. How dare you? Why would you ever say that to me? Like, I want to go do this. And he goes, look, man, you're my bro. I love you, but I'm telling you what I see. And sure shit, I realized I was in Vegas and I was with my family and I was fed up and I picked up that script and I read it and I realized, oh shit, like, you idiot. You didn't even read the script.
Right.
This character is one of the coolest characters ever. And this is a guy who had just been killed off of Lost 3 years before that, right?
So great.
And I said, oh my God. So I called my long-term brother and agent, Craig Shapiro. I've been with Craig since I was 18. I'm 46. Or 40, yeah, 46. And I said, Craig, don't kill me, but is that Kevin Williamson pilot available for that role of Vampire Diaries? He goes, I mean, probably not, dude. They've seen 400 actors for that. That was the role of the season to get. I tried to tell you that. But let me call. So he calls Go Casting, and they go, sure, we can see him. We can see him, but it has to be tomorrow at 11. And there's 10 pages of dialogue. We'll have a little reading. If it's any good, we'll do a work session, and we'll see where it goes. So I was like, oh my God. Mind you, this is 9:00 at night. I'm at dinner with my family, and we're taking my niece and my nephew to Circus to a show that was like going to end at midnight. And I thought, oh my gosh, all right, I got to dial into my family. So what I did was I slept a couple hours. I went to the business center in this hotel, taped all the sides together, put them in the dashboard of my car. So illegal. Turned on all the lights and drove through the Mojave Desert in the middle of the night. I left at like 4 or 5 in the morning and they were in that like CNN building on Sunset Boulevard, got to the bottom into the parking lot at exactly the moment I needed to be there, like 10:57, ran upstairs, did a 2-hour work session. And by the time I got down to the car, I had a test deal.
That's crazy. Now, tell me about meeting Julie Plec. To me, she seems like one of the great showrunner, writers, architects of, I just think Julie's a genius.
She is an incredibly talented, hardworking woman. I cannot tell you when I sit back and I think how much she was fielding, and in kind of the sense of what happened to Damon, you know, JJ was kind of gone from Lost. Don't quote me on it, but by like episode 3 of season 1.
Yeah.
Right?
This is a problem when the showrunner that creates the show disassociates from the show. It's not
Well, I
good.
mean, he was still there to like conspire a bit, but Damon
Yeah, you
Lindelof
know
at
what
the
I'm
time.
saying.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Julie stayed with the show
The whole time.
vested all the way through the through line of the show, which is what was so incredible about it.
She did, and it was pretty unbelievable. And if you look at what she was able to spawn off of that, which was the originals and then legacies, the originals went for a long time. And so Jules and I have had an unbelievable journey. Kevin Williamson and Julie Plec, I owe an enormous amount to. Kevin took me under his wing. He was the older of the two.
Yeah.
Crazy, highly experienced. Very like no bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, Julie and I can sit there and be like, well, you know, this and that. Kevin's like, no, screw that. This is what you need to do. Don't fuck around. I disagree with you. I don't like that. You know, he's like, but he'll say it in a funny way, like, don't do that. You sucked. And he'll look at you and you're like, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, let's just try that again. Don't do that again. I'm like, okay. But those two together created magic. And what's so wild is, again, in that Malcolm Gladwell moment. By the way, the testing of this show was horrible. I crushed the studio test with Peter Roth. I was a dear brother, like a dad to me and a mentor. And then I bombed the freaking network test. I bombed it. Leslie Moonves, who at the time was the head of CBS, he and Don Ostroff wanted to test other people. And they did. And I had to go back. And I mean, so much so, you know, I did the studio test and I went back to my house. I lived in Venice, a beautiful house in Venice at the time. You know, I'd done Lost and I'd done this big Weinstein movie. So I could afford to go and do theater in New York and do independent movies because I just made a ton of money. And, but that all went away after Katrina, starting a business for my sister and my brother. But at the time, I had the ability to like dial in, but I guess I went home. I think I like gave myself a B12 shot in my ass, just like wake up. And, you know, I had probably too much coffee. I couldn't drop in. And I get a call from Alyssa and Craig, and they're like, and Todd Rubenstein, my lawyer. And he goes, they want to retest you, man. You did a great job in the studio, but the network isn't buying it. And I went, are you kidding me? I mean, the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
So I said, just convince Les Moonves. Tell him I want to retest. This role is mine. This is bullshit. You have off days. Look, if I was on a set, a director, I could try it 8 different ways, right? So the long and the short of it is, they gave me another chance. It was it was the morning Obama was in town. So the whole city of LA was shut down. I left 3 or 4 hours early just to get to the CW, plant myself in my car, run the material, walk around the parking lot, kick some stones, laugh and joke, talk to freaking like, you know, parking columns, and settle into my skin. And I walked up there in character. There was another guy in the waiting room. I forgot his name, this blonde guy, super handsome, sweet guy. But he was trying to psych me out. You know, I think he was either drunk or he pulled Paul Newman in The Sting, right? Where he had like put alcohol in his breath or something, wanted me to think that he was like super cool. And I was like, buddy, this is my role.
You nailed the role. And we're coming very close to the end of our tether here. So what I propose is that we regroup and do another, because I have the whole second half of your career. You have a heart out now, right?
I need to get going because I'm late for something. But by the way, why don't we finish it? Why don't we do it live at our show? We'll just, when we're having our lunch, we'll do it together.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But let me just do one more thing before I let you go.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the show and some of the incredible threads on the show that were so amazing. Your backstory, the brothers' backstory, all the stuff in the 1800s, I loved.
Love it.
Incredible. We have to talk about Catherine and Lena, but just tell me about your first impressions of Paul Wesley. I mean, you two, it's one of the great, brother character arcs on episodic television. What was your initial take when you met Paul, and did you realize you guys were going to capture lightning in a bottle together?
I thought we'd be together for 5 seasons. I thought it was going to be Twilight on TV for a while. We were getting our fangs fitted in Burbank, California, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be my brother, man. We're chilling, we're happy."
Your fangs.
Literally, we went to get it was a fitting for our fangs.
Great.
But I came to realize, and people get so mad at me when I say this, and it's not because Nina is my ex or any of that stuff. It's the true love story of the Vampire Diaries is the brothers.
Definitely.
They were to the very end, the bitter end, from the very beginning to the bitter end. They were lockstep. Half the time they wanted to kill each other, except when they were drinking bourbon. But, Paul and I knew we needed to bond. We were going to make this work. We immediately got rid of everything. Hey, I'm Ian. Hey, I'm Paul. Let's fucking make this work. We have an opportunity right now. They saw 400 actors for those 2 roles.
Yeah.
Paul tested, he had so many readings with other characters and other people. I mean, he was exhausted by the whole process. Paul had a bunch of test deals. Paul, for that season, he was testing for V. He was testing for another huge show. I don't remember which one it was, House or something. Or The Apprentice, or no, what was the Simon Baker show? Not The Apprentice, that's Trump. Not The Illusionist, that was fucking Ed Norton. Anyway, so we knew we had this opportunity, and we were going to, come hell or high water, we were going to dial into it. So much so that 2 months later, when we knew the show was picked up after our pilot, we went to Atlanta together to get apartments next to each other, literally next to one another. Yeah.
Like the Beatles.
Right? We wanted to just be able to either walk across the street or walk across a hall and work together where we could really live these scripts. And
I don't think you guys could have anticipated how amazingly you did bond. The chemistry that created was more than intention. It manifested itself in an epic manner. You had an incredible run. And when we reconvene in New Jersey in a couple of weeks, we'll pick up this thread at that time. This is a perfect point to end part 1 of this epic talk, and just tell you, how much, what a pleasure it is working with you. I mean, I love you so much.
I love you too, brother. You've been so good to me. You're really a brother from another in this life.
The world we need to talk a lot about these incredible movies that you've done. Kiss the Ground and Common Ground. Talk more about the principles of soil renewal and replenishment. And there's a lot of things that we have to get across in the second half, which we will.
Yeah. Hell yeah, we will.
Ian Somerhalder, thank you for your time. And
thank you, brother.
I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks in New Jersey, brother. Hey folks, I'm Adam Malin, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, Kit Bowen, who is off at a remote location as I am.
Yes, but I still have the background, so I'm still.
Yes. We're here
Glad
today
to be here.
talk about the Mission Impossible movie series with Tom Cruise, even though, as just a little bit of historical context, I'm a huge fan. This is before you're born, Kit, but I'm a huge fan of the original TV series, Martin Landau, Barbara Bain, Leonard Nimoy. So, I mean, that was really amazing. But I have to
Peter
say,
Graves. You have to say Peter
Peter
Graves.
Graves, yes.
Me too, though. Me too. I watched it in syndication. I watched reruns of it. I loved it.
It was
loved
great,
it.
but I do think that the Tom Cruise movie series has upped the game, and it's been amazing. So I think, Kit, we're going to do a big overview of the
Yes.
series leading up to the release of the final edition. I guess this is the end of the series, right?
Well, at this point, yes, but they kind of leave it a little bit open ended. I think Tom might be done with it, but well, we'll get to it. But I think there might be a mantle passing at some point. Not in the film, but I'm just saying in general they might reboot it with
And
somebody new.
Kit, what are some of the through lines of the entire movie series, in your opinion?
Well, basically, starting from the very first one, which was in 1996. Obviously, at that time they were kind of making movies out of old television series. It wasn't something completely unheard of to do. And
Wait a second, you're saying that it's 29 years already?
30 years. Yep.
Wow,
They make a big point of that in this final film.
crazy.
Yeah. 1996. It was directed by Brian De Palma. So he
He was a
kicked things
great,
off.
incredible director.
Yeah, really great. I mean, very young Tom Cruise at that point, hot off of everything that he was doing. So it was certainly something easy for him to slip into. There were some characters that were introduced in the very first one that actually end up making it through, like all the way through all of the different movies, including Vin Rames, who plays Luther, who becomes a very integral part of the IMF team. And he actually only missed one movie, I think, although he appeared at the very end of it. That was Mission Impossible 3.
Yeah.
Or 4. No, I'm sorry, 4, Ghost Protocol.
He's had Ving Rhames has had a huge career.
Yeah. Well, he's fantastic. But anyway, this character of Luther has been such a, very, very much of a heart of the story and heart of Ethan Hunt's story too. Because the basic thing about Ethan Hunt is that he will sacrifice even the most, he'll still do all the impossible missions, but he will not, he'll sacrifice something to save his team, basically. Yes. So he's always about saving his team. Anyway, the first one was a great send off to it. Had that opening credits where, you've got the little fuse going and you've got like shots from what's going to happen in the movie. I love that. That's probably my most favorite thing about all of Mission Impossible.
A couple of other motifs from the original TV series about should you choose to accept this mission?
Yes.
And then it'll self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Self-destruct. Yeah. All of that kind of stuff. And then, of course, it became, a whole stunt-laden situation with Tom Cruise. But the first one, suffice to say, kind of introduced a bunch of characters that end up popping up. But the premise is that this new IMF team, which is called Mission Force, that's what IMF stands for. And they basically take on the most impossible things to save the world, like time and time again. I mean, that's just the bottom line of it. But in the first one, Ethan's kind of kind of a new kid on the block with the IMF, and he's been mentored by Jim Phelps, who's played by John Voight in the original. Also, we've got Henry Shersey as Kittredge, who's sort of a bureaucrat, government bureaucrat who sometimes likes the IMF, sometimes is hunting the IMF. So it just depends on what the situation is. But suffice to say, it was a lot of action. And one of the main things that it's iconic from the first one is Tom Cruise coming down into this vault. It's called the Black Vault. And he has to be lowered down on a wire, and he literally can't.
That's actually been riffed, 100 times by many, many other shows, movies and TV. Yeah. So the very iconic scene.
Yeah. So, and he has to. This vault is so hypersensitive because it has the most, whatever information in it that's so classified that any sort of variation in temperature or breathing or anything can set off the alarms. And so at one point he's sweating and he catches the drop of sweat. Anyway, the character who is the architect of the Black Vault, William Dunlow, very small part played by Rolf Saxton is the guy's name. He too will come up at the very last in this last movie as well, which was a great little surprise return of his character. But yeah, great film. There was a great chase scene with a helicopter on a train inside of a tunnel. You know, always the best of the action sequences and whatnot.
And whenever possible, practical scenes.
Yes. So then we got to 2, which came out in 2000, and that was directed by John Woo, another great action director. He's great. And for some reason, the second film definitely didn't measure up to the first film in many regards. But also sort of got pushed aside in the sense that it didn't really follow through, except for a few key things that happen in it. It's kind of more of a throwaway one, but the standouts were Tandy Newton as sort of a thief / someone who gets kind of. They always bring these sort of what do I want to call them? Misfits of some kind. They've either done something wrong, or they always kind of bring them into the IMF in some fashion.
She's sensational. She was amazing in Westworld.
Oh yes. And she's beautiful in this. There's lots of chemistry between she and Tom Cruise in this one. I guess the main stunt in this one was there's an opening shot of Tom Cruise basically free soloing it on the side of a cliff, and he like leaps over a drop and then is hanging from a ledge. So that was like the opening shot of his character, and of course he has to go on another mission to bring down this bad guy played by Dougray Scott. I think that's how you say his first name. Anyway, Doug Gray.
Yeah.
So again, kind of a throwaway. Doesn't really factor into anything major in the whole scheme of things, but still a worthy installment in the 8-part installments of this. So 3 is when things really start to take off, and 3 was 2006, and it was directed by J.J. Abrams. Again, didn't shy away from any great directors on this franchise. But the main thing about this one is it introduces Michelle Monaghan as Julia, and we've come to find out that Ethan has fallen in love, like for real. Found the woman of his dreams, and he wants to marry her. But of course, he's still working for the IMF and doing things. But he's trying to hide basically what he's doing from Julia, but still trying to do both things, and it's not really working out that well.
Yeah, Michelle has had a couple of great turns recently. She was on White Lotus and was on that, and was also with Vince Vaughn in Bad Monkey, which was a fantastic TV series by Bill Lawrence.
Yeah, Michelle's been around for a while. She's great. Also, there's another film she did called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Right.
With Robert Downey Jr. The bad guy in this one's probably one of my favorite bad guys of the whole.
Incredible actor.
Yeah, just amazing.
Yeah,
and he was a really good bad guy in this. Anyway, this one actually factors into the last one as well, because he, like you said, he's sort of a nefarious tech guy who sells high tech to the Best Buy or whatever, and even if it's not a good thing for the world, basically. And one of the things that is introduced is called the rabbit's foot. We're not entirely sure what that is, but it is the impetus of the main AI villain in the last 2 films, the Entity. Yeah. This was the beginning of it.
Yeah.
This also introduced Simon Pegg to the series, which he
fantastic.
He brings the comic relief as Benji, but also the more and more went on. He started as more of a comic relief, but the more and more the films went on, he became very integral in the whole thing, and also very, a part of the family, basically.
And Benji is a facilitator. He also has a lot of technical smarts. He's definitely an important member of the team.
Yeah, so he's helped Ethan. In this one, he kind of helps Ethan do some stuff that he's not supposed to do. But the main thing was that Michelle Monaghan's character Julia is introduced, and it looks like maybe at the end of it they might have a happy life. But yeah, we all know that it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Also, it introduced two other parts of the IMF team, Maggie Q and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, who were part of the team in this one, and they didn't make it to further installments. Never quite sure why. They kind of don't really ever explain it. But again,
we love Maggie Q.
Yes. And the big stunt in this one was they call it the Shanghai jump. Tom leaps from one skyscraper to another, then swings via fulcrum and slides down a building's roof while shooting villains. Then he parachutes into a building. So
I don't know how much of that was practical, but it looked gnarly.
But again, here's you see the progression here. The stunts get more.
The best ones, action sequences are yet to come. But yeah, go ahead.
So then we get to Ghost Protocol when they quit numbering the Mission Impossibles and actually give it a side name.
And what a great film.
I know. Ghost Protocol was 2011, directed by Brad Bird, who of Pixar fame.
Fantastic.
So yeah. He's a great director, and he did a really good job. This introduces Jeremy Renner to the series as Brant, who's kind of a new member of the IMF, and also Paula Patton. She plays the newest kind of kick-ass female in the group, and she too doesn't end up making it through the rest of it. So, but in this one, there's a great opening sequence where they're in the Kremlin. And Benji's helped set up this sort of mask, this like
it's like it's like
VR,
a virtual image that they bamboozle everybody with.
Yeah, and then ends up getting out of there. There's a bad Russian guy who's the main bad guy in this, and he wants to get the launch codes for all the nuclear bombs, all of those, so he can start World War III. But the Kremlin is bombed. So once again, and always in these, Ethan is somehow, or Ethan and the IMF are somehow blamed for some horrible, catastrophe of one or another, and so he's blamed for this. So he's got to clear his name and all of that.
By the way, frequently the IMF's bosses or the government portions of the governments that are employing the IMF themselves are dirty.
Yes.
Turn on the IMS and betray them, make them scapegoats, and we'll try and kill them. So it's not the best job in the world.
And that's evident in the very first movie when the whole IMF team is compromised and killed, basically, and they all blame Ethan for it. And it turns out that Jim Phelps, who played by John Voight, was actually the real bad guy. So there's always
it's slightly safer to work at Creation Entertainment than working on the IMS team.
Anyway, so this one really took the stunt thing to whole new levels. So they're in Dubai.
It's the this
whole mission.
Burj Khalifa.
And he is scaling the exterior of this building. And it is just like, plus then you've got this giant sandstorm that's coming at them from a ways away. And he's like, what is that? Well, don't worry, we'll be out of here before that.
First of all, Tom Cruise had a side gig as the window cleaner at the Burj Khalifa, so he was already used to being on the side of the building. But seriously, though, he's a complete nut. It was practical. It was practical. Okay. Who's going to go out on the side of a building 2,000 feet up and dangle, with suction cups? Come on,
he's crazy.
I watched that scene.
I know
it's terrifying.
Terrifying. I want to tell this funny story though. Matt Damon tells it. It's not my story. It's Matt Damon's story, but it's very funny the way he tells it.
Yeah.
So he says, I think it was for this film that, how they went out for dinner. Somehow they were at some event. They ended up having a meal together or something. And Matt goes, so Tom, I mean, honestly, what happens? How does this work? How do you make these things happen? He goes, I thought about that stunt for years. I wanted to do something like that, and so I mapped it all out, and and I got it all, set up, and I went to the safety guy, and the safety guy was like, cause he's doing Tom Cruise. Like, the safety guy's like, no, I'm good. We can't do that. We can't do that. That's not going to work. He goes, and he pauses and he goes, so I got a new safety guy. And
ultimately, I think the insurance companies that have to insure Tom Cruise must be pulling the hair out of their head. But the funniest thing about that scene is, suction cups, really, and then sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
It's a Benji invention, right?
Benji, better technology than that, please. Anyway, okay.
Look,
what a scene.
Here's one of the best things about Mission Impossible, at least for me,
is
yes, it is impossible to watch sometimes without thinking, but for this particular series, it doesn't happen for all of them. Like Fast and the Furious lost me as well a long time ago, but for this one, it's okay. I can suspend my disbelief because of Tom Cruise, honestly.
Well, and because
he's so dedicated.
These action scenes most of them are pretty well much practical. So, like I say, he's a lunatic that will do these stunts himself. You got to give him, I call him a lunatic, but what he really is a master craftsman.
Yes.
A guy, with nerves of steel. And there's never been an action hero like him that takes the risks that Tom does, gives the payoff that he does. I mean, huge props to him for thrilling us the way that he does. Anyway, please continue.
Well, he's that's what he wants to do. I mean, he's all about cinema and the experience. So, so then we get into what I call the McQuarrie era. Christopher McQuarrie, who actually won he actually won an Oscar for writing The Usual Suspects. Was actually nearing said he was almost about ready to quit the biz. He hadn't really gotten anything, of any note going on. And then I guess, I'm not sure how he and Tom met, but somehow they ended up working together, and Tom saw the potential of a great collaboration and a great partnership with him. So the next 4 movies were directed and co-written by McQuarrie. So Rogue Nation is the first one. That's 2015. This is my favorite. This was my favorite
movie. Yeah, set it up for us.
Yeah, this was my favorite Mission Impossible movie. So basically, Ethan and the team are basic set to infiltrate and somehow disband this new terrorist sort of group called the Syndicate. And this plays in the next 2 movies, the Syndicate. The main instigator of this, his name is Lane, played by Sean Harris. Great actor, great character actor. And also this movie introduces Rebecca Ferguson as Ilsa Faust, who is
we love Rebecca.
Yeah, she is also a disavowed MI6 agent.
Yeah.
Who is undercover, basically trying to get to Lane as well, and she sort of works for him, and has to, do some pretty bad stuff in the name of trying to bring this guy down. So, she's just a fantastic actress. Rebecca is my favorite.
I think most of our viewers know that she's the lead in Silo.
Yeah, she's the lead in Silo. She did The White Queen. She's done just a number of things, but she is definitely my favorite character of the whole series as Elsa. And she runs up against Ethan in a few tussles, and the one big one was there's an opera scene where she's supposed to assassinate like the Chancellor of Germany or something like that, and but there's other people there as well to assassinate it, and Ethan's trying to thwart it. And just the whole play, the music playing behind it.
It's a very tense and scary scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's so fantastic in it. I mean, she really is. She's just so badass. And they've had a couple of great moments where they're chasing on motorcycles, and she's really good at it as well as he is. It's like Ethan and Metta's match, basically.
Yeah.
But Alec Baldwin is also introduced as the newest sort of bureaucrat lackey, Alan Hunley.
Turns out to be a good guy.
He turns out to be a good guy, but at first, Jeremy Renner is sort of trying to help the IMF through the government. You know, he's kind of like their spokesperson. And he's, you know, and Alec is like, well, we got to get these guys. And he's like, well, you know, I don't know about that. And so, yeah, it's, and of course, Simon Pegg and Vin Rhames are back again. So now we've got really the core group of IMF teams is these, including Rebecca now. She'll end up being a part of it as well. But certainly the three of them. It's the Trinity.
Ving, Simon, of course, Tom,
yeah,
and Rebecca and Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but Jeremy doesn't last past this one. So that's what ends up happening with that. But anyway, the big stunt on this one again happens towards the beginning of the movie, where Tom Cruise is hanging onto a plane, like an airline plane taking off, and he's on the side of it, and he's trying to get Simon Pegg, Benji, to open the door for him. He goes, well, where are you? He goes, I'm on the side of the plane. Open the door.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And he did film it. He did film it. Flying up.
That.
You know, he's out of his mind. Great scene.
And then there's Sean Harris, like I said, he's the main bad guy. But then there's this other sequence where he has to go down into this like water propelled
generator.
Yeah,
got to go down underwater.
They got to stop it from turning around.
Yeah.
Before he'll get crushed. So they stop it for however many minutes he has, and he's got to get this
water gag. And I guess they did this in some kind of a big water tank. And I mean, I don't know how long the guy was underwater for, or I don't know how these people hold their breath for minutes at a time, like an Avatar. I mean, somebody said that Sigourney Weaver held her breath for 9 minutes. I'm saying, what kind of a person does that? I mean,
Well, I did hear Ed Harris had a big problem with James Cameron when they made The Abyss. He got pretty pissed off at James Cameron for some of the stuff that he was making him do in The Abyss.
That's actually an awful scene where, was it Mary
Elizabeth Mastriano, yeah.
That's a horrible scene where she drowns. I mean, it's just like nobody wants to watch this person drown in front of their eyes. But keep
that in your head when I get to the last movie. Just keep that in your head. All right, so anyway, so those are the two big sequences in this. But honestly, for an overall kind of storyline, and the bad guy isn't, it's not too out of the realm of what he wants to do. He wants to create chaos. Yeah, wants to just wreak chaos and whatnot. And but then Rebecca Ferguson coming in was just icing on the cake for me. I just thought she was fantastic.
That was a defusing of a nuclear device towards the end of this episode.
That was Fallout.
That's Fallout. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
This one was just trying to apprehend Lane, basically, and get him, because he was setting up basically what ended up being Fallout.
Yeah.
I guess in essence. So Fallout was 2018. And again, directed by McQuarrie, and we've got Henry Cavill as August Walker, who at first we think is a good guy, but it turns out to be not a good guy. He's a U.S. agent. Yeah,
a very good role for him.
Yeah, it was a great role. And then also
did some great action work together.
Yeah, there's a great scene, a fight sequence that happens in a bathroom in a French club.
Oh, that's fantastic! Close quarters. Yeah. Really sensational. Yeah, really great.
Yeah. So, along with all these incredible stunts that Tom does, he always has some sort of hand-to-hand combat situation to a fight sequence of some kind. And he's brilliant at those as well. It's not quite like John Wick, which, specializes more in that kind of stuff.
And by the way, we're going to do a breakdown on the John Wick movies in a few.
Let's do it.
Cinema Squad. So, folks, watch about that. But we haven't mentioned another great Tom Cruise thing that he does in all of his movies is he has a running super fast sequence. He's running out, super fast to get somewhere. He's got to do that in every movie.
Well, in Fallout, it's particularly good because he's running on the top of a building, and Benji's trying to tell him where to go, and he's like, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm on top of a building." And he's trying to chase down Henry Cavill. And he's like, we're running on top of the building. That also happens in Dead Reckoning too. He does the same kind of thing, running on top of the building. Yeah,
Right.
there's always a running sequence for Tom.
Yes.
Man, that guy is he's a monster. He's a beast. But anyway, the other two characters that I loved that got introduced in Fallout was Vanessa Kirby as the White Widow, who turns out to be Vanessa Redgrave from the very first movie. Her name was Max. She was sort of a dealer as well, like buying and selling of things, nefarious things. And Vanessa Kirby's character is her daughter. So that's kind of a cool. I just love Vanessa Kirby. I mean, from The Crown, she played Princess Margaret. From the young Princess Margaret, she's just another actress. Like, her face is just so incredibly watchable.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing her in Fantastic Four.
Yes, that's right. And then Angela Bassett's also, her character is also introduced, Erica Sloan, who's like the head of CIA or something like that at this point. But she factors in later here in the last movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So basically at this point, Lane has been apprehended. He is apprehended at the end of Rogue Nation, but his kind of flunkies or his terrorists are still planning this nuclear, basically to destroy half the planet or whatever kind of thing. So he's kind of still maneuvering things in the background, even though he's technically been captured.
Yeah.
So the other great thing about this one is they bring Michelle Monaghan's character back. Julia, they end up going to this camp, this sort of like a medical facility out in the where are they? I forgot where that last sequence takes place.
They're in the desert somewhere.
No, it's the mountains, like Nepal or something like that, or
It's
some
like a dry, arid place.
Yes, but with mountains and everything. So anyway, she's there. She's remarried, and he gets to her storyline basically gets to be wrapped up. And they kind of make reference in Ghost Protocol with Jeremy Renner's character, who he says he was back in the day was supposed to protect this couple in Prague, and it turned out to be Ethan and Julia, and it seemed like Julia was killed in this sort of situation, but she actually wasn't. She just went underground so that she would be protected for the rest of her life. So it's kind of sad that Ethan couldn't have his woman, but he ended up protecting her anyway. And I think Rebecca Ferguson in Fallout sort of becomes his new friend, I should say.
Frenemy.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, they end up becoming, I think, more than friends at some point in time, but they never really delve into that, but it's kind of hinted that they probably have a romantic liaison. Anyway, so again, the whole thing kind of wraps up at this place, is wherever they are in the mountains area, and Lane is there, and he's got these two nuclear bombs that they have to coordinate to snip then Rames is Luther's on with Julia's on one, and then we've got Benji and Ilsa trying to get Lane in the other one, and it has to be just right. But the first thing you have to do is get the detonator, which is Henry Cavill's part. He's got it on, and he's taken off on a helicopter. So Ethan ends up climbing his way onto a helicopter from.
Also a gnarly scene. Yes.
And the whole chase sequence with this helicopter was unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, any real human would have died 1,000 times over, but
and also impractical.
Yeah. So he's able to do it. It's the same kind of thing where they're all out, they're all in different locations, and they have to make this thing work, at the right moment. But Ethan has to be the one to get whatever it is he has to get so that they can do what they have to do. And if he doesn't turn off the detonator and they snip these wires, then everything goes kablooey. So,
it
makes you on the edge of your seat.
Reminded me a little bit of the ending of Goldfinger when Bond, is trying to defuse the nuclear device that Goldfinger has left in Fort Knox, and it gets down to 007 before it. And not even Bond that turns it off. It's like some government guy that comes in.
I know. It's all the same kind of stuff. It's the same kind of stuff.
Wow, that was fantastic. What do you think, Kit?
Yes, Ian is very dreamy.
Oh,
I'm gonna have to just say very dreamy, but yeah, he's fantastic and love hearing him tell all these stories.
mhm. And we have an awesome convention coming up, do we not?
We do. We have a Salute to One Tree Hill show that came out in the early 2000s. It's at the end of this month, June 28th through to 29th at the Westin O'Hare Hotel in the Chicago area. It's got a lot of great guests. We've got Chad Michael Murray, James Lafferty, Bethany Joy Lentz, Austin
Wow.
Nichols. Yeah, we got a really great cast. So definitely check it out. Go to Creation ENT, look on their calendar, and click on Salute to One Tree Hill. And hopefully you can join us if you're a big fan of the show.
Can't wait. Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. And we can't wait to see you next time on the Creation Entertainment Podcast. Tell your friends.
Bye.